You're listening to SM Media. Hi, folks, and welcome to your season opener of the Celtic Report, your exclusive SM Media Celtic podcast. I'm Scott Pike. It's a pleasure, as always, to be your host, and I'm delighted to be joined by my special guest this week. Season opener, it's a pleasure to pick on Connor Ryan.
Thanks for having me.
How you been? I know we had you on for the post-match Scotland pod. Was it Hungary?
Just before, I think it was Switzerland.
Switzerland. So it's been a fairly chaotic summer for us, but we're back to domestic action. What's your kind of thoughts with Celtic going into this season?
Um, I mean, excited going into it after watching pre-season. I think we've looked brilliant, but at the same time, I'm worried the fact that the squad is weaker than it was at the end of last season. I think the fact that we've not really got many, especially outfield signings, ready for A, either going to America or B, going into the opener is quite a concern, to be honest. Um, but still confident, just from what I've seen in pre-season so far.
Obviously, last season couldn't have went any better, and at the end, obviously some big games, big performances, winning a league and cup double. I think a lot of fans would have taken that getting into March. And there was just a sense of that Celtic were just the best side able to cope with that end of season. They were the fitter side, they were the stronger side, and they were the more battle hardened side. And that looks to me to be where Celtic were at. And again, getting into this season, probably expected more in terms of recruitment. I know there's still time, but I'm seeing a lot of winks in terms of like there's areas that you're looking at, but I'm not seeing a lot of concrete offers, a lot of concrete rumours. That a concern?
That is a bit of a concern. I know obviously Rodgers came out today pretty much and said that it's a matter of hours for Phil Bernardo to come back in. And obviously all the talk with either of them now, like still being a part of a WhatsApp group and missing flights with Norwich and stuff like that, kind of aims towards us getting him, but all the other kind of links have sort of died a little bit. Like I think it was the winger from the Belgian league that kind of faded away a bit. So Celtic definitely do need players though. And only what is I think it's only Kyogo up front at the moment, really. You're kind of one injury to him, and you've got a bit of a disaster on your hands. Say we don't get Adam either, then it's who do you kind of turn to,
Yeah.
really. I don't know if there's just a bit of lackluster with the board. I don't know if it maybe be a bit quicker in recruitment if, say, we had Camsey qualifiers to play like we will next year if we do get to this point, maybe a bit more urgency. Um, and as you said, there is still a month to go in the window. There is still plenty of time, but as simple, I would have really liked players in by now.
The one big thing, obviously, coming out of the last season was Joe Hart's going to be retiring. The goalkeeper situation needs badly addressed. And there was a wee while where I was thinking, what is the actual plan here? There wasn't much in the way of links. And then over the course of a few days, that seemed to completely change, where Celtic brought in a number one and number two with clearly a vision for the present and future. Obviously, we are talking about the arrivals of Kasper Schmeichel and Bizanji Sejalo. I think keep getting that name confused. Please forgive me if I have got it wrong. Celtic, obviously, goalkeepers. Celtic have not had a tremendous record when they bring in permanent goalkeepers with finances, Barkas being the prime example. But when Kasper Schmeichel was linked, the first thing I thought was that makes total sense for a couple of seasons. And then when you saw Sensalo linked as well, you were thinking there's clearly a plan here. And Kasper Schmeichel is more than capable for a couple of seasons. And then you've obviously got somebody waiting in the wings who will just develop, will play cup games, will be there, will be learning off Casper Schmeichel, who's probably as good as anybody to learn off at the moment. That has been well done. Even if it doesn't work out this season, the way that's been constructed, I really like.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it as well, to obviously have that kind of experience and then bring in the younger goalkeeper. Especially Casper Schmeichel's just played like how many, 3, 4 games at the Euros there. So international keeper still. Played some big clubs, obviously knows Rodgers well from Leicester and stuff. So it did make total sense. And then I didn't know too much about Sinazalo before he came in. It seems like he had a good season at Exeter on loan from Aston Villa. Um, so as you said, get him into a few of the cup games, stuff like that. Don't know if maybe the game coming up against Hibs, maybe would that maybe be too early for him? I don't know. But now I'm a big fan of the plan that was put in place for that.
That's it in terms of incomings. There is obviously talk of a left back. I do think a centre back, particularly on the left hand side, is of massive importance. Do you think it all depends on what happens with a certain Matt O'Reilly?
I'd, I, I think the board maybe think that, but I certainly hope it isn't that because I'd like to, even if we kept O'Reilly, still to bring in quality to go around them. I don't think we'll keep him at all. But I do think some of the offers are far too low, like 15 million and stuff. And I don't know how he's went from being linked to like Atletico Madrid to then being linked to like Southampton and stuff like that. I know Southampton have got the Premier League money now, but um, the quality still needs to be added around them, like especially in the left back spot. There's not really been talks of renewing Greg Taylor's contract. So is there an idea to maybe bring in someone there? I know Wolves aren't really willing to let
Yeah,
is it Hugo Bueno go at the moment, so it means we'll probably need to turn to another target, and it's kind of how they turn it. Hopefully they've got a plan in place for that. The Celtic board, you just never know. We could be 31st of August sitting here thinking, right, who's coming in today at the
yeah,
last minute.
yeah.
Um, so, but I mean, if you kept Torre, it would be amazing. But at the same time, I would take the money.
What do you think is an acceptable offer? What do you think it is just a case of 20 plus, or is the ambitions there? Like he's clearly talented. He can clearly justify any fee that's paid. If you were Peter Law or Michael Nicholson, what would you accept for Matt O'Reilly?
I'd take probably over 20, definitely over 25. It would need to smash the transfer record for me. The fact is, you see all these like kind of other countries like the Netherlands, Belgium, they can all sell players for like really high amounts of money. It's like, why can't we? Roger said it today, value the player, not the league,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. Um, so I think 25, 30 million for me. But just don't, it doesn't really seem like clubs are kind of thinking that way at the moment. I think they can kind of lowball Celtic. So we might actually struggle to get that fee.
Obviously, the two loanees from last season, Paulo Bernardo, that deal feels imminent. I think it'll probably be announced by the time this podcast goes out. Adam Ida's a bit more complicated because there's clearly ambition there for the player to make the move. Don't think there's much ambition for Norwich to sell, certainly not for what Celtic have reported to have bidded. And there obviously is now a glaring lack of depth in the Celtic striker position. Ida just feels like a matter of time, though. I just feel it will get done. It just there will be a resolve and there will be a resolution at some point. I put out a thing yesterday saying this like 7.5 million I saw quoted for a few from a few Norwich kind of sources. That seems to me to be a lot higher than what originally was discussed. I think it was six that was the reported bid. 7.5 for Adam Ida. Is he justified that on what you saw at Celtic, or is it a case of he's clearly still got youth in his side? He's scored some massive goals in massive matches. Do you just do it and gamble, or can that money be better spent on maybe a more rounded striker? Because I still think Adam Ida, despite his goals, I don't think he's a complete striker yet. The one thing that stands out to me though is he certainly seems to be a Brendan Rodgers striker, which I think is a big thing here. And there's clearly ambition from Brendan Rodgers that he wants the striker to come back.
Yeah, I've always kind of felt like he is the perfect Brendan Rodgers sort of striker. Even when he came in on loan at first, I thought that's a great signing. Pretty much, he holds the ball up well, fast, can get in behind really well. Reminded me really of like an Odsonne Edouard, Moussa Dembele type of player. Um, I think 7.5 million would be fine with me if we paid it. Just the fact we paid like 9 million for Edouard a few years ago, and that seemed to work out well. I can understand the risks of it, but just the kind of way the football market is now, I think Celtic do need to start spending the cash a bit. So yeah, I'd be happy with 7.5 million.
Where else is needed? Like I've spoke a lot about, I don't think you can go into the season with Liam Scales as the first choice left centre back. I think he's an okay squad option, but in that position you need somebody of a lot better quality because yes, he had a really good time when he came into the squad last season. He obviously came in at a real time where there was no depth, but later on in the season you saw his distribution fall a bit. You saw him get exposed quite a bit as well. Thought in pre-season he had a bit of a shaky game against City, and that position badly needs upgraded.
Yeah, it certainly does. Especially going into Europe, and I know we'll probably get into like the Champions League and stuff like that, but especially with the new format of playing like two more games, like 8 games with Liam Scales at the back, he's definitely got caught out, and this is Celtic's chance to actually advance quite well in Europe because of obviously you're playing. I don't know what pot we are, pot three or pot four, but we're
Pot
playing
three.
pot three, so we're playing 4 teams around our level, but I can still see Liam Scales getting caught out against those teams. So if we could just bring in a centre back that is that sort of level, I think we'd be fine in getting through. But a replacement's definitely needed, and I've seen straight away Navrocki's out injured as well, so kind of lacking a bit of cover. I think we're trying to kind of push Lagerbielke out the door a bit. I've always felt like he was probably
Welsh is
given
quite unreliable as well. Look, I don't
yeah,
think.
there's been talks of him going out on loan as well. So we're definitely getting rid of people. And then say we get rid of those two, Navrocki's still injured, that leaves us with only about what two or three kind of centre backs. It's not enough going into a big like kind of campaign with the 8 Champions League games now and a full league campaign.
And left back's obviously an area as well. You look at Greg Taylor now. I think Greg Taylor has been a very good player for Celtic, but it's clear that I think a lot of fans, and I think they're right in saying this, that position needs upgraded. Just for the fact is there's no depth there for a start. And Greg Taylor's fine, but you just feel that that position can be upgraded. There's a couple of links, obviously, in the past. Bueno was obviously the main one. There's a couple of links to a couple of players in Scandinavia coming up in the next kind of the past few days as well. There just seems to be that need for something in there, just that depth more than anything. But if Greg Taylor, if you can get somebody in there in that position, makes Greg Taylor a better player because right now Greg Taylor's comfortable because there's nobody. Adam Montgomery certainly isn't going to push Greg Taylor, but Greg Taylor's maybe too comfortable at the moment because there's nobody there. You need somebody in there who's either a number one option or a number two to push Greg Taylor. And then the advantage of that is if this player turns out to be terrific, he's the starter.
Yeah, I was impressed with Taylor during pre-season, but as you said, like if we could bring in someone with better quality, it just raises his game at the same time because he'll be the one saying, "I am the number one Celtic left back. Like I've been here for years. It should be my spot." So he'll be challenging whoever it is, and wait, I think we won't see Alexandro Bernabei ever again, pretty much for
No.
Celtic. And Adam Montgomery is obviously nowhere near the standard to play in Europe. Never mind like top six SPFL. So yeah, the quality's definitely needed to bring in that position.
What do you like with midfield? Because obviously it depends. O'Reilly's obviously the big kind of flying element here. But Hatate, there's been links in the past few days with him. Don't see that happening. McGregor's obviously reaching early 30s, so there'll maybe be a bit more protection for him this season. Bernardo's coming in. Thought Home was really good in pre-season. Thought I was quite encouraged with him, but I still feel as there's maybe a space or two in that position, just for a bit more depth and a bit more quality.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy we're bringing Paulo Bernardo back in, but I feel like if we lose O'Reilly, I just don't. I mean, obviously last season with Hatate, he was injured for quite a lot of it. You're kind of hoping if you get an injury-free Hatate this year, it would maybe make up for the missing of O'Reilly. and you just start with Bernardo, Hatate, and McGregor. But depth-wise, I don't know how Rodgers is with home. Like as I said, he was good in pre-season, but felt like he just really wasn't there in the squad really last year. He kind of started a couple of games at the start, and then you didn't really see much of him. So I'd be happy to bring someone else in to challenge, not necessarily to start, but just to kind of challenge like Bernardo Hattati. Obviously, McGregor's never going to get dropped, being captain and stuff. But yeah, I'd be happy to see some movement in midfield. So I would.
And then obviously kind of forward areas, wide areas have obviously been a concern for a lot of people since last season with Jota leaving. Maeda, Palmer, Kuhn, you've got Yang, Johnson, Forrest. There's six bodies in there. I think Kuhn really kicked on. Again, we'll kind of cover pre-season as a whole because I think there is a lot to cover there. But wide areas, are you comfortable? Is there maybe one more needed? There's certainly a Mikey Johnson that you feel should probably be moved on. Forrest obviously came back in it last season at the kind of later stages, made a real impact. Yang, you feel needs a loan. Do you think that they're comfortable in that position, or do you think there's maybe one or two needed?
I think I would take really one more, but I feel like Brendan Rodgers is comfortable with who he's got. James Forrest was pretty much saying today that he's still going to be around this season
Mm.
and is expecting pretty much to play a few games here and there. Um, Mikey Johnson, obviously, I thought he was a bit of a bright spark in pre-season, but at the same time, I just think he needs to be moved on. Like it is time to move him on.
25, he's 25, and he like it's crazy.
Yeah,
Like you think the fact that he's 25 has been there a while, but it just seems to be like I don't see him doing what a Scales has done, for example, or I even go back to Christie before it, where they did kick on and become quite a key part. I just don't see him doing that. But you will see wee sparks where you think he's an international.
yeah, definitely. I agree with you, Yang. I think Yang needs to go out on loan to get him a bit up to speed. But I don't know if Maeda's going to be ready for the first game. I don't think he is. So I think it'll probably be Palmer, I think, going into the first one.
He's
Pa-
looked okay actually. Like
yeah,
I do think he did need a season. I think he needs a bit of pre-season. I think with Palmer he's going to be inconsistent. That's the thing. But there are flashes of brilliance there. Like he looked. See the last game of the season. I think it was at Aberdeen. He kind of played number 10 for a bit. It was brilliant. Like
yeah, I thought it was good.
there's there's a good player in there. It just needs to be managed right.
Yeah, and it's good that he can like play in that number 10 though, because it gives Celtic a completely different option as
Yeah.
well. Couldn't obviously say I thought he's been pretty good. Again, he was about the same as I was quite inconsistent when he first came in. He'd show like some bright sparks, but then he was like struggle at times. I
Mhm.
think this might be a season where he can really kick on though. I'm really excited to see what he can bring to the Celtic team. Um, but I mean, Maida obviously brilliant. Brilliant, especially in the last season. Like going up against like Tavernier and Ibrox and stuff like that. So if we didn't bring anyone in, I wouldn't be too like kind of disappointed in that. But at the same time, one more maybe for competition, shell out some of like Mikey Johnson, Yang and stuff like that, then I'd be happy with that.
And obviously up front is Kyogo, and that will change. There will be a striker added. There's been mentions of Miovski. I don't see that happening. But Kyogo's obviously. I thought Kyogo looked really good in pre-season. I think if you've got wide players who can just give him a real good a good point of service, I think he's going to be very very good. My thing with Kyogo is though, I still think that he maybe is having to drop back a lot. Now, that's not a knock on Kyogo, it's maybe just the way the system's built around him. I do think that's of massive importance this season because he's clearly number one choice, has to be. But last season, the first two seasons of Kyogo were excellent. Last season, he still did well, there's still good points, but there's also moments where you felt, do you really fit this? And kind of going to be a question mark of this season, getting into this season, is Kyogo the number one. He should be the number one option, but is he the best suited to this system?
Yeah, obviously like start of last season, there was a lot of fans pretty much saying like, "Why are we playing this system? We're completely nullifying Kyogo's abilities. We should be getting him in behind as much as possible instead of just dropping deep." I think it's actually kind of worked out a little bit so far in pre-season. I've liked what I've seen. Obviously, Kyogo's been really good so far, but I think the second half last season especially, it really worked because you could get Ida to do that job, and then they could like switch out, and so you'd have like Ida tiring out the defenders, take Ida off, bring on Kyogo, and then in behind constantly. It works really well, but he's definitely going to need some sort of backup. We can't just go with just one striker. 'Cause as I said earlier, one injury, and then we're struggling massively.
And obviously, we'll mention pre-season. There's results in there that are absolutely fantastic. Now, let's just obviously kind of look at the Celtic performances over the pre-season. Now, you're looking at obviously the American tour. Ayr Queens Park, it was obviously like there was a 1-1, there was a 6-4. Anybody there stand out in terms of kind of young players that really impressed? I thought the boy Lawal was pretty good. I really like a couple of the young players in the B team. I'm going to just say that off the bat. I think there was a lot to take away from the boys at Davidson. I think that,
Yeah,
that on top about he was really stood out as another boy whose name's just escaping me at the moment. I will get it right. But in terms of those games, like there seems to be a good crop of player coming through in the B team, and I really am encouraged with what I'm seeing there.
yeah, it's good. It's good to see, especially how you mentioned Lowell. Obviously very impressive last season on loan to Rotherham. Um, and then I'm hoping to kind of see him in a bit of the first team,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. I really don't want to just get stuck in the B team. I'm not really the biggest fan of B teams, to be honest. I feel like some of the players kind of wasted down there. Like I seen they got beat 3-0 off East Kilbride last
Yeah,
night in the Turf Trophy.
yeah,
Um, so I'd kind of rather they went out on loan or something like that instead, or just get appearance to the first team. Also, I was kind of excited to see a bit of Rocco Vata, but obviously the wages down south, we apparently just couldn't compete despite the promises were given. I think there was talk maybe saying he would have been third choice striker and stuff like that up here. Um, but he's away, and Celtic have really got that problem of just holding on to their young players. They just really can't cope and compete with never mind Premier League Championship wages
yeah,
at this point down south. Um, but the young players did perform well in the pre-season games, especially the first two. But with the first two games, I was a bit concerned about how some of the senior players kind of performed. The defence. I know you can't
yeah.
look too much into it, but the defence did look very shaky. Like
It
seeing
did, yeah,
40 Queens Park is a bit of a like you kind of take a wee look at that. Like it's a bit strange.
yeah,
Um, and Air United, obviously, it was two penalties that were scored in that game.
yeah.
So, but I mean, the American tour was 10 times better.
Yeah, two players that I will mention. I've just got their names: Matthew Anderson, Colby Donovan. They're two players I really was impressed by, and I've heard a lot of good reports coming out of the B team about them. So I will obviously say they're worth keeping an eye on this season. You mentioned obviously the tour in America. Let's just get into that because we stayed up to watch it. 4-0 win against DC United, where if Matt O'Reilly was playing for a move, then if Matt O'Reilly had scouts in the audience, he certainly was playing for that move. Matt O'Reilly was absolutely marvellous. But I wouldn't just take away from that. There was a lot of positives to take out, a few other players as well. DC United was a real standout game. And one thing I go back to Brendan Rodgers' interview after that game. I didn't see that a lot last season, but he looked absolutely delighted just with the level of performance.
Yeah, then he had every right to be because we're absolutely brilliant. I think he and Ben Rogers also said that like, they're all obviously a lot fitter than us. They were halfway through an MLS season pretty much, or just getting kind of started. Um, and he said that they'd be fit. I think he said they'd be fitter than Man City and Chelsea pretty much, and
Mhm.
they'd be a tougher game. We ended up sweeping them aside 4-0, kind of no real issues there. Obviously Matt Riley was just unbelievable. I kind of thought he'll probably be flying back to America to sign for whoever, Atletico Madrid or Milan or something like that. But no, really impressed. Sadly, I only managed to catch about 8 minutes of the game because Celtic TV is just
Yeah,
Celtic TV. So I had to kind of just focus on the highlights.
yeah, I managed to get
But
in some American channel and it was good. O'Reilly was certainly the standout of the DC United game. The City game was quite chaotic, but I think we can safely say, and I wanted to save Nicholas Kuhn to this point. Kuhn in pre-season was absolutely electric. If that's what he can put up, that there's a real player there, and he's a perfect example of if he's got a pre-season, if he's given time to gel, he could be frightening. If that's some of the runs he had, some of the ways he was able to just get into to attack space, I thought he was terrific against, particularly against City.
Yeah, especially that assist for Kyogo, the
Yeah,
outside of the lip
frightening.
Villa pass was just frightening. So it was. That's the best he's played, and I'm really, really hoping. Like I said, that's why I was excited for him this season that he can take that into the season because he showed a couple of bright sparks, as I said, from signing. But he was unbelievable. I thought Kyogo was really good. I know take it with a pinch of salt. City's team was full of youngsters,
Mm.
good youngsters like that, but I just thought they were unbelievable. And then went 3-1 up, went at the break. I just kind of had this thought in the back of my head, like City might just get back into this. And obviously, Haaland out jumping Liam Scales, like something I could always see happening. They managed to grab the equaliser, but it's good to get the win out of it. So,
Yeah,
um, yeah, very impressed with that performance. I think it was Lewis Palmer, wasn't it? Was they got the fourth, wasn't it? It
yeah,
was a good move.
yeah. It was.
Um,
Yeah.
Maybe slight questions of offside, maybe, but brilliant getting in behind. That's what I like to see.
And then this was a bit earlier in the evening, but Celtic played Chelsea on the 27th. It was a lot of the thing coming out of the match was how bad Chelsea were, and I do agree Chelsea were a bit chaotic, but some of the goals Celtic scored were remarkable. And the second goal I want to touch on briefly because this is where Kyogo is at his best. Watch the goal back and watch just Kyogo's attention to staying onside because obviously I think it's Colwell, the Chelsea defender's trying to play him off, but Kyogo's just so intelligent. He's just able to know the right moment, just taking a creep on, creep. It does very well to score the goal. And again, some of the build-up play was terrific, and I thought against Chelsea as well. Chelsea were a shambles. I don't think anybody will say anything other than that. But Celtic's pass accuracy was 85%. And looking back at some of the games, watched the game back again yesterday. Some of the patterns of play were just terrific, and that's clearly been worked on in pre-season as just finding the right kind of patterns and using kind of the players to suit that. I don't think it's a coincidence that they've kind of kept the same system. They've kept the same players. Like Maeda obviously came in, looked a bit off the pace. Forrest was coming in. I think that's probably the team that starts opening day. I think if everybody's
Yeah, I'd
fit,
agree.
that's that's kind of what just stood out to me as like O'Reilly was very good. Kyogo I thought was brilliant, and but you had the options like Home had a good game. Palmer came in, like Kuhn rested or Kuhn injured? I can't quite remember. But there's options there. There's options off the bench. That looked to me to be that this is finalising what I want to do on opening day. And I don't think they can up against a better opposition because they literally could have just played any system they wanted. Chelsea were all over the shop.
Yeah, Chelsea were a bit of a joke. I don't really know what Maresca was trying to do. To be honest, it wasn't even as if it was like how City done it and just put a team full of youngsters out. That was pretty much first team standard. So it was some of the football players who cost like I don't even know how many millions. But Celtic were just
There's
I
three
thought
three
were
players and four players on that side over 60 million quid.
yeah, I mean I thought we were better than the City game. So
Yeah,
well, that
I'd
was
agree
like
with that. Yeah.
complete performance. And I'm hoping we can like reflect some of that performances in Europe this year. Um, so when I do, and I agree with that, that would be the team for me that would start the opening day. And Rodgers has definitely looked at it that way as well, and he'll be absolutely delighted and very confident going into Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we mentioned Europe. The Champions League is going to take a different format. We saw today, it was announced today, obviously, the planned process in terms of the draw and things like that. I think it is you're right. I think it's something like two teams against pot one, two games in pot one, three in pot two, or something like that. Again, it's going to be quite confusing to follow at the start, but obviously two games coming up in terms of the Champions League. The draws were announced. Four games at home, two extra games. It's a massive, massive thing because the one thing you can throw at Celtic in the past few seasons is Europe's been quite below par, and it needs to improve. That all depends on the quality of player, but there is this opportunity now. There is a different format. It's not just group stages. You can, do you know what I mean? There's going to be a lot more. You're not going to be out after 4 games. This could go to 8 games, and I think you will see. I think I'm imagining, I'm expecting a different Celtic side in Europe this season.
Yeah, the fact they can come like 24th out of 36 and still make it through to the
Yeah,
knockout rounds and stuff like that. I definitely think I could see Celtic finishing that kind of 16th to 24th position, maybe even higher than that. I think the way it works is you've got 2 games against the pot one teams, 2 games against pot two, 2 games what pot three, pot four, but it doesn't matter what pot you're in anymore. So Celtic realistically, say they get like the 2 pot 3 teams and 2 pot 4 teams at home, realistically could be looking at 12 points, which they probably should be aiming for if we are a pot three side. Um, but do we have the squad depth for 8 games in Europe? Don't know yet. I think that's where Celtic might struggle. I think they're maybe 1 or 2 injuries away from, if they don't really get the signings in, they might struggle. But I'm confident with what I've seen so far.
yeah, absolutely. Obviously, season opens on Sunday against Kilmarnock. We've kind of discussed, but I think we're in agreement that will probably be the team that lines up the team we saw against Chelsea, barring any injuries. It's important to go off to an home day. It's flag day. It's obviously a big occasion for the support. Kilmarnock are obviously going to be in one of two moods going into the opening. They're either going to be flying high because they've got through in the Europa League, or they're going to be out for revenge because they've been knocked out and knocked down into the Conference League. I do think Celtic will have enough. I do think they'll go off to a strong start. It's not going to be easy. It never is against a Derek McInnes side. Kilmarnock were a bit of a thorn in the side last season, but I thought Celtic Park they handled them really well. Give us a prediction for opening day and what you're hoping and expecting.
I think I'll go for like a 3-0 win, I think, for Celtic. Um, I'm hoping to, as I said, see that team start. Kind of hoping to get the goals in early, sort of thing, kind of avoid any frustrations. Maybe like 1 or 2 in like the first like half an hour or something like that. And then maybe give like maybe a couple of the youngsters a chance. Maybe just at the end if we are comfortable,
Yeah,
like 10 minutes to go or something like that. Maybe give like a wall, a run out or something like that. Obviously, we just don't know what kind of command we're going to get. As you said, they'll either be flying high or they'll be out to put in a good performance. I don't know how they're going to get on. It's tomorrow night, isn't it? Don't know how they're going to get on tomorrow night. But they're definitely obviously a tough side to beat. And even if they are tired, they still will be tough. One of probably the toughest opening days you can ask for. So looking forward to it though. Going to the game. So looking
good,
forward to it.
good. Right, we'll do our season predictions. We'll get you back on at the end of the season to run through these to see how far off the map we are. Player of the year. Who's player of the year?
Mm, going to go for. I would have said O'Reilly, but it probably won't be here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's going to be a big year for Kyogo.
I think so.
I think he's going to have a completely different year to last year. I think he's understanding the system a lot more that Rodgers wants to play with him. But I'm kind of basing that on him not getting his competitive a striker in as either or something like that. If we don't get an Ida in, then I think he'll kind of run away with a player of the year. But if we do bring an Ida in, then he'll play like half the games probably, and get half the chances. But no, I think I'll stick with Kyogo.
Okay. I think, barring injury, barring potential January transfers, I do expect him to say I think it could be a big year for Riho Hatai. I think if
That
he's
was
able
my
to get a full season and under his belt, yeah, I think this could be his real year that he kicks on. I'm also going to give a wee mention. I think Alistair Johnson was terrific last half of the season last year. I think he could have a brilliant season. I'm going to go for Hatate. I'm imagining you're going to go for Kyogo top goal scorer.
Yep.
It's a no-brainer, in it? It seems to me, I do think there'll be a good spread. There was a good spread of goals last season. Obviously, there was a bit more in terms of the kind of balance. Like O'Reilly chipped in with a few. Like Maeda was even getting in the mark as well. Palmer had a good record. There's probably goals. I can see it depends on either. I do think Kyogo will be out in his own though. How many trophies will Celtic win?
I think two again. I think they'll get the cup double again. Could see them maybe missing out on one, but at the same time, with the finances that Celtic have got and the kind of not trouble that Rangers are in, but just like the uncertainty around Rangers. Celtic should be walking away with it this year.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Um, yeah, the slight disappointment not to win the treble, but I would take a double. I think
I'm
sound quite
with you.
entitled saying that, but yeah,
Yeah, I think league and cut trebles absolutely not out of the realm of possibilities. We know if the season's gone by. I don't see any other outcome than Celtic winning the league. I've said that on other shows we've done, and I do think cup. I just think the thing with Celtic is that the longer the season goes, the more battle hardened Celtic are. Like I don't see that from other clubs, particularly across the city. And League Scottish Cup, I can see just being not easy, but quite easy to predict. Will Celtic reach the last 24 of the Champions League? Yes or no?
I'm going to say yes. Yeah, I think they will this time. Just with the way the new format is and stuff, it seems like for clubs like Celtic, it seems a lot easier to get into these knockouts. Obviously, it kind of rules out the sort of dropping into Europa. They
Mhm.
can't do that anymore. So
I didn't
I
actually
think
know that was a thing. I didn't know anything about that actually until the other
I
day. And
don't,
yeah,
I
it's
don't
true.
think you
Yeah, you're
can.
right. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, which I think's pretty good as well because
Mm.
like you shouldn't be finishing third in a group and going straight in another competition where you're probably going to be favourites.
Yeah,
And
it's quite annoying seeing like a team finish third and then like going to the final and stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah, I do think it's a good thing. I do think Celtic. I think this has to be the time where Celtic turn the dial up in European football. They have to. Like they've underachieved. There's nothing. There's no other way around it. There's been performances at home, but I think Atletico Madrid last season was a perfect example. They were really good against them at home. Away from home, they were absolute shambles. And
Mm.
there has to be a balance there. And if you can get that balance, there's sides not of the standard of Celtic doing way better in the Champions League.
Oh,
That has
absolutely.
to
Yeah.
change. That has to change, and that obviously depends on recruitment. I do think there will be a splurge at some point in August. I think it just depends on O'Reilly. I don't think though losing O'Reilly, like even if you keep O'Reilly, still spend money, still go out and go right. We need better quality. The project kind of thing last season didn't work. I know there's players like Navrojski you feel who could improve. Palma I think can improve, but this season has to be your quality summer. You have to go out and look at those areas and go right. Where can we improve? We need the goalkeeper position. I think has been sorted fairly well, but there's 4 or 5 areas of the park you feel can be massively upgraded, and I think it has to be done either in the summer or January. But we will be back. There'll be a post match after the game against Kilmarnock on Sunday. We're back in a couple of weeks with a full episode of the Celtic Report. To my guest tonight, Connor Ryan, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you very much. Enjoy Sunday.
Thank you very much for having me on. I will do, hopefully. Good, hope a
Brilliant.
good result.
Here's hoping. And thank you very much everyone tuned in, folks. If you want more Celtic content, then subscribe to our YouTube and podcast and Patreon channels. And we'll see you all soon. Thank you very much.